welcome everyone. Welcome to the August NAL ED Talking Circle. That's the Native American Language Talking Circle. Welcome. We're going to wait just a sec to let everybody get their audio on. If you wouldn't mind, we'd love to hear from you. Say hi from wherever you're zooming in from. Say hi to all your fellow grantees. And then we'll just make sure everybody's got their audio on, and then we'll get started. Okay. Looks like we've got everybody on. Okay, well, let's get started. We'll get started first by playing our disclaimer.
And figure out where they.
This presentation was produced under U.S.
Like if it starts out.
Contract number GS00515CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred.
Okay, now that we've got the disclaimer, let's take a look at what we'll be talking about today. So today we'll start with giving you an opportunity to talk about your challenges and hear from your peers how they've tackled some of those challenges. And then we'll go over some NAL ED grant management business. Some of these reminders are for all NAL ED, while some are specific to either grantees from fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 2022 grantees. At the end, of course, you'll have some time to divide into breakout groups to discuss some really maybe interesting topics as you are either gearing up to end your grant.
Anyway, you said you went to one of your speeches you really liked the other day.
Hi, someone, if you could, I hear you talking, if you could just put it on mute. Sorry, I don't know who that is. Thank you. Let's see, where was I? Oh, then we'll be talking about maybe how you're going to prepare for some of the grantees preparing for the next grant year. And so that's our agenda today. I would like to welcome your OIE Interim Program Officer, Donna Sabas-Burns, and Gabby. I didn't see if Gabby was here. Hi, Donna.
Hey, now Gabby is busy on a project, so she will not be attending today. So just me in the background.
Well, that's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
I'll do that. And then, of course, I'm Oleni Lily. I am your OIE Technical Assistance Coach. I'm also joined here by my fellow team members, Sarah Brightwell, as well as Casey. She's on deck as well to help watch the chat, as well as we're going to provide some documents to help you get through some of your grant management. So they'll be manning the chat as well. So if you have any technical issues, you can just put it in the chat and they'll assist you. Also, I'm sure you know, you guys have been coming to Talking Circles for a while. If you have any questions, you can always put it in the chat, and there will be times, again, because this is a Talking Circle, that we will ask you to, come off of mute and please share, as well as ask any questions. So let's get into chatting already. One of the things we wanted to start the chat with is, what have been, your 3 greatest challenges over the last grant year? Would love to hear from you. Please come off of mute or put it in the chat. No challenges?
Oh, there has to be something.
Yeah, I got to read a lot of APRs, and so
There's Alana. I know she had some challenges that she had worked through and getting started. I know Robert had some challenges getting started.
Particularly for those grantees, grantees who've been in the grant for a while,
Exactly.
the 20 grantees, We'd
I'm
love.
throwing you guys under the bus here.
Throw me under the bus, please. I have some biggest unfortunate. Oh, so the biggest challenge is number one, it was the clandestine event of COVID. That really, and that's when we were awarded the grant. So it was really hard to actually complete and find someone to hire.
Yeah.
Which we were really unable to do. And then so we were able to work with these ladies and move the money that was supposed to hire a assessment specialist. And then we were able to put that into a different for on the grant, we put it into the category of other. But our business end, we put it in as extended contracts, and we had our teachers on extended contracts to fulfill those duties, which really worked out in the end. And so that was a challenge. Another challenge was basically spending the money. And unfortunately, our business and finance office has had from when we started has had over 100% turnover rate at the moment.
Wow.
And at the moment, our director of our finance and assistant director of our finance both resigned. And so we're kind of we're in a free fall right now in our business offices. So again, and I guess the reason why I share this is that there's new grantees on here. So you don't want to experience what we're experiencing, where we were behind on our spending, and being behind on our spending, really what unfortunately that kind of requires our business office, finance office to do a little more legwork for us. And then now that we're in we really kind of had a hold in being able to spend any money, and our grant is actually coming to an end. So this next month for us is going to be it's going to be ultimate planning. There's going to be a lot of anxiety. So you don't want to be where we're at in terms of, again, as a public, and also I'm coming from a public school. So maybe you will have more freedom with your staff, because the only time we were really able to put our staff on extended contracts were either small hour contracts, so that they would put in at the end of the day, which is really tough. Teachers are burnt out by the end of the day, or before the school year or after the school year. And again, I would really recommend that we figure out a way. If you do have money for extended contracts with certain staff, figure out a way to spend that not in the summertime. Because the field of education is very taxing on all of us. It takes so much out of us because we put so much into it. And quite frankly, like myself, this for a month, I like, from a mental health, I had to just step away from everything. So another thing too, I would really recommend, and I'm really thankful to an extent that this is the first grant I've really had to manage, not because it's a big grant, but because of the team behind the grant really helping us and giving us really good guidance. So again, any new people there, one of the way that I've been able to face our challenges is just being transparent with the people who are running the show, and they want to see us succeed. They want our languages to succeed. They're not there to police us as much as they're here to go, this is what it says on this paper, these are our requirements, and this is what we can do in order to get there. Because again, we might stumble on our journey home, but as long as we get home and these people are there to help us, they got GPS telling us, take a left right up here, then I missed the left, and like, okay, well, you're gonna take a right, then another. So again, build that relationship with them, and you will be on their minds if you are persistent. And gosh, again, but the biggest challenge too is just our finance office having, now it's going to be like 175% turnover rate from when we started. And I don't say that in terms of of a blame game. I say that in terms of as a director of this grant, that's something that that falls on me to have to navigate around. And had I been more efficient in planning out my expenditures rather than just a month ahead, if I had been planning for 6 months ahead, this I would not be in the situation I am at. So really, a big challenge is just not necessarily thinking about this as a three-year grant, but like approaching it as like, okay, I've spent this much in this month. Now the next month is coming. I want to spend that much. I probably should have sat down with a calendar and mapped it all out, like the whole 3 years, rather than the first, rather than 3 months.
Right.
So again, one of the challenges that I've had is just lack of skill in terms of being able to plan for spending. Another challenge that I've actually encountered too, and this is a challenge that is maybe on our end, but also with the way we wrote our grant. Because one thing that we want is we want elders and we want fluent speakers, and with that too is not only do I want fluent speakers to work with people, so that would require a extended contract, but I also wanted to just simply get quote unquote supplies from them. And what I mean by that is both translations and basically word lists and recordings. I've been able to work. So the way that we work at our school is if I gave a fluent speaker X amount of phrases and stories that I want translated, at our offices, we interpreted that as a service. So therefore, they have to be on a contract service agreement. However, if I'm buying a book from them that they've already created, then I can buy that as a supply. And the reason why this matters is because, again, a lot of our elders, some of them, the only skill that they have is the language. And I don't mean that to demean them. That's a very amazing skill. But when we put them on contracts, you're also kind of not, there's a, we are in language revitalization after 50 years of language revitalization efforts. And in those 50 years, in certain communities, mine included, there has been exploitation. So people are very, they're just very cautious, and there's a sensitivity there. And that sensitivity makes sense because we've been injured. And when you have someone on a contract service, a lot of times, a lot of people are worried about their intellectual property. So if you're able to put money and make sure that, like, you talk to the school board or the people who run your business offices to like make a special policy that when you work with elders, you should be paying them as a supply rather than a contract. Because when you buy it as a supply, they actually still retain the copyrights to it. Same as if you were buying a book. But if you're doing a contract service agreement, then then also they also get stuck with having to do a more paperwork in terms of their taxes as well. And again, I don't know if that's going to help you in certain ways, but seriously, I mean, we need to take care of our speakers. And we do need to treat them the same way that we treat other, like we buy books from, I don't know, the big conglomerates, and we treat them the way that they want to be treated. We ought to be able to do that at a business end on ours. And so really, had I known about the way these monies had to been spent on our end, I would have approached my school board earlier in creating a policy for us, a financial policy. And again, at least I wish I was aware of this earlier to be able to even fight for it, where again, we are buying a product from our elders. They of course they're providing us a service, But this is all just, you know, the jargon in the financial area. Because again, one thing, as a somebody who really takes language revitalization seriously, is the analogy I use to approach it is basically, we're down 50 points and it's the fourth quarter, and we need to play our cards the way we need to play our cards, and we need to like not debate and fight among each other, and we need to put the ball in the person's hand who could score. And what I mean by that is, if we hire a fluent speaker to go work with kindergartners, we're not really utilizing them. It's like putting Michael Jordan out there to pass the ball.
Yeah.
We in the office and with teachers need to work with the elder directly without the students there, unfortunately, depending on the status of your language.
Right.
Because we don't want our elders to repeat the word horse and dog 50 times a day.
Yeah.
We want them to say it once, and then the teacher is the one who repeats it 50 times a day. What we need from our fluent speakers is we need to get those old words, more and more of those old words. And I'm not like saying like put them in a factory mill and treat them like a horse, as much as I'm just saying like utilize their time as well as our time. And it might even be more fun for them to go into deeper levels of the language with people who could keep up with them. So that's another challenge that I've been having is making sure that we're utilizing our fluent speakers to a way that'll benefit children who will be born after they pass away, after we all pass away. Because again, if we make one film and record a speaker telling a story, that is infinitely more valuable than having that elder tell their story to, unfortunately. And again, you can have them do both.
Right.
You do want those recordings more than you want them working with students, because you can record a classroom, but again, you got to remember the audio that's going to come from that is not going to be the greatest quality. You're going to have kids yelling in the background, which is lovely and great. I love the sound of kids, but there's a kind of a just this reality that we need to face, that unfortunately, if we only have one elder, we don't want them in the classroom. We want them in the office, and we want them helping us design curriculum. And then we use the recordings and their knowledge to give professional development to our instructors. And then those instructors will be the ones who work with students. And that's just where we're at in our community. And it's an unfortunate sacrifice we need to make. But again, language revitalization is a sacrifice in its end. And it is a very tough thing to do. It is very tough. One of the reasons, another challenge is just having access to our language. If we wanted to like scrap the Blackfoot language here and focus on German, just because, it would be so much easier for us to teach German here. It would be so much. We can give them German movies. There's literature. When it comes to our language, we really have to create everything from scratch, mostly. And I don't say that as a criticism, as much as I'm just really describing how detrimental colonization really has been. And obviously, one of our challenges that we've had is the continued trauma of colonization, because in the end, I think that's what's really going on with our business office as well. But anyways, sorry to like pontificate about my woes here, but again, just to recap, challenges that I've had is the lack of my own planning in terms of my expenditures, and not planning far enough into the future. And then another challenge is that turnover rate. And again, the way to alleviate that is just having that planning. And the other challenge I had is just the lack of knowledge and the lack of experience running a grant. And the way that I've been able to navigate that is just by local experts in our community and the people who are running this meeting. They will help you out. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert. That was so rich. And just so rich. And I love, sort of you're looking back and what maybe you should have done, that will really help, I hope, inform our newer grantees to take your experience and to take some of the things, you think you should have done, and maybe be able to apply that, and they can do it. So just wonderful sharing. Thank you, Robert. Anybody have any, I mean, I just think that was really rich. Does anybody have any questions of Robert, or maybe wanting to expound on their own challenges? Maybe that were, as you were listening to Robert talk about it, maybe came up in your head is like, yeah, I faced that too. And this is how we overcame that challenge. Okay.
This is Cindy Odell from Two Eagle River School.
Hi,
And
Cindy.
I agree a lot with what Robert said. One of the challenges we had initially was to find folks to do professional development. It seems like a lot of those professionals are very busy because I think a lot of people are needing their services. But we did take advantage of sending 2 of our staff to Dr. Gray Morning, his workshops. And they came back, and I think they're going to be able to do some workshops for us at our in-service from what they learned from his workshops. And then we were able to work with our one of the culture committees that teaches Sanka language. And so they're going to come and do in-service for us. We visited some very special sacred sites, including the Kootenai Falls, and had a Kootenai elder come and talk to the students and the staff during summer school.
Awesome.
But I think one of the challenges we're having right now is looking at how we can formalize the curriculum and the assessment process. And if anybody knows of any resources or I guess specialists that could help guide us with that, that would be awesome. We do have a great partnership with the Kootenai Culture Committee, and we have right now interns that they're working with, apprentices who are coming to the school, and they'll be coming next year and teaching a period of Sanka language.
Awesome.
And so anyway, that would be something I think that's challenging for us. And I had one more and I can't remember what it was, but anyway, I just think that I'm glad that we have 5 years of this grant, because I really feel like year 1 is really getting all of our ducks in a row, that we are really, like Robert says, doing that long-term planning and seeing what we need to make this the best project that we can do with this time. So awesome. Thanks.
Cindy, I had a question when you talked about formalizing the assessment. Could you describe that or explain a little bit so that people maybe can share some of their resources specific to how you are defining formalizing?
So right now, the apprentices assess individual students. They know where they are. They have a guide that they have adopted from the Salish and made it more pertinent to Sanka language. And so, but just formalizing the process. So, we can look at things like, how do we assess students and making sure that that assessment is valid and reliable. And then what can we do with the data once we do these assessments? That I think we can do more. We can use them educationally and know where we want to teach them. And I think they do a good job of that informally as they work with students, but just how do we formalize that process and what can we do with that data?
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Does anybody have any maybe resources they want to share or experiences as it relates to, I know a lot of you have been developing your own assessments or taking another assessment model and sort of tweaking it to make it relevant to your language curriculum. Anyone want to share any resources or experiences as it relates to that?
Sorry to talk again, everybody.
Go for it.
So Cindy mentioned that she worked with Dr. Gray Morning out of the University of Montana, and he's the one who created this method called ASLA, or Accelerated Second Language Acquisition.
Mhm.
And we kind of were inspired to create our assessment to kind of really utilize this ASLA. And ASLA is a completely oral method of teaching and learning a language, and you use a vast array of images. So basically now our assessment is rather than having the English word bear, if they want to like put in gallo, the word for bear, we'll have a picture of a bear.
Mm.
So we really, for our assessment, we really leaned in heavy in basically photography and art to
Mm.
so that again we don't have the English word spelt out pencil. There's just a pencil there. Um,
Mhm.
and someone might think might just be kind of arbitrary or an artistic move, but
Mhm.
it really it's designed to do is that if that image summons that native word in your mind, then that means that that word and that image
Right.
exists in its own place in the language. Rather than having to go through English, you went to the thing, to language. And when you do that, you're prioritizing your target language more than you're prioritizing the colonial language that we speak.
Mhm.
And it's a small shift, but it's very critical, I believe. And ASLA is like that. ASLA is completely all in the language, and it's not a sink or swim type method. I would describe it more so as you're learning to dance and somebody is guiding you through it. All you got to do is just let them take you on the journey.
Yeah.
And basically it presents the language in what I'm saying micro stories. Like to say the phrase "a dog is running" is a
Mhm.
micro story. And so we take those micro stories and then it just grows and it scaffolds into the next lesson.
Mhm.
So for this first 3 years, our assessment right now, it's really it's bigger than it's ever been, but we are actually getting more success than we've ever been.
Mhm.
Uh, and and again, part of our assessment is we delineated it for us in public school from K to 12. And so we have the people in kindergarten have a smaller assessment than those who are in the 12th grade. So that's another thing we did with our assessment is make sure that it delineates in that regard.
Mhm.
But anyways, I guess I just really want to shout out a praise for ASLA, because I mean it was life-changing learning ASLA. My life changed from it. So I really recommend to look into it, and I'd be happy to talk about it all day. As you guys can tell, I'm happy to hear my own voice. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Robert. That's great. We like to hear your voice too. And I think, some of the part that Robert shared that may be helpful for you, Cindy, is really all the decisions that you're making as it relates to your assessment one of the ways to formalize your assessment is to document that as far as the process and the decision making. Also, finding those points in the assessment and creating a data review process with your teachers and engaging them in that discussion. And again, documenting that is another way to formalize your assessment. We used to do inter-rater reliability meetings with teachers, and that's basically when you have an assessment is getting a small group of teachers to rate a student's response and see what they come up with, and then to have a discussion about why maybe a teacher scored them at their response as a novice, while somebody, maybe said that they were intermediate, and for teachers to have that discussion and to then settle on what they would have rated that student as a group, and then to document that as well. And so when they go into, if you have teachers proctoring or maybe another proctor coming in, you have all of those, I guess, decisions and discussions documented as a way, again, to formalize your assessment. And the great thing about that is, as you're doing that, you're really doing like action research, and you're beginning to build a base around best practices as it relates to developing your own assessment. So those are just a couple of strategies that you can use that I know like we used in order to formalize our assessment process. And I mean, I could talk for days about that, and I'm sure, so could your group about, how to formalize. Awesome. Thank you, guys. That's just a great discussion. And before we sort of move on, I just want to make sure I have space if anybody else wants to share a challenge. If not, you can always put it in the chat. All right, so let's get into some of the grant management business that we need to be thinking about at this time of the season of your grant. And so here is one of the first maybe questions is, should I submit an APR update? And so here's a question you can ask yourself. So if you reported a 999 for some or all of the measures in section A of your APR, remember back to April when you worked on your APR. If you did, if you can say answer yes to this question, then you do need to submit an APR update. The next question, I submitted an incorrect number or a number that needs to be changed in section A of my APR. If you answer yes to that question, then yes, you do need to submit an APR update. If you in your APR submitted all correct and complete data in section A of your APR, and really that means that you did not report 999 for any measure, then your answer, if you report no, then you do not need to submit an APR update. Here's some reporting reminders. Excuse me. If you reported 999 in your APR, you must provide updates for those measures. And so this is the time in which you can do that update. And I think we're going to put that form actually in the chat. Excuse me. APR updates must all include measures that you reported as 999 in the spring 2023 APR. And so you really want to make sure that you go back to that APR, check any of the measures that you reported 999 and provide that updated information. You want to be able to, you need to complete that information on this form, and we'll see that form in just a sec. Also, we want to encourage you to include the optional C tool in your APR update. Maybe some of you did not complete that form or did not provide an alternative form with the same information when you did submit your APR. Now's the time to submit that, as well as maybe you got, increased your numbers. Maybe the number of students you served changed. You can always provide that update in your optional section C tool. And Casey just put that tool in the chat as well, along with the section A form. And that form looks like this. So again, this is that form that you'll be updating your section A data, any, again, 999s that you reported from spring, or maybe even incorrect numbers. And just a reminder, I know we always talk about this, but you want to make sure you are reporting both your GEPRA and project measure. For the GEPRA, if you reported 999 or maybe an incorrect number, you want to make sure that you use the exact wording from the GEPRA. And then you are only recording data in that ratio column right here where you see the check mark. All of the columns that have an X, we should see blank, or sometimes G5 may require you to put a number. If that's the case, just put 1/1 and we'll know that that was maybe a G5 glitch that required you to put a number in that place. But you are aware that that is not where you should be providing the data. And then when it comes to your project measures, you want to make sure that you're using the exact wording from your APR project measure. Those project measures that you put in and reported in on your first year will follow you throughout the life of your grant. And so you want to make sure you're using the same exact language year after year as it relates to your project measure. And then, of course, you will be reporting in the ratio column of both the target and actual performance data. When is this due? Okay, so your APR updates are due on October 26, 2023. You can submit these at either of the links there on the screen. All right, my throat is so itchy. Okay. And there are Casey's throwing those links into the chat for you so you can access that. Now, for those of you, this is for fiscal year 20 grantees only. This is looking at the no cost extension and final performance report. So here's the questions you can ask yourself as it relates to a no cost extension. Again, this is information for fiscal year 20 grantees only. For those 2022 grantees, this is just maybe a fore view of what you need to look at the end of your grant, so you can kind of get a look-see on what that looks like at the end of the grant. So the question you have to ask yourself first is, do you still have work that needs to be completed in order to meet your grant objectives? Okay, so if the answer is yes, then you want to think about moving on to the second question. Have you made substantial progress during the 3 years of your grant? Okay, I know again, the first year and probably even the second year, you know, amid COVID, there was a lot of challenges that you had to face. And so, you know, you were trying to figure out the best workarounds, how to meet those challenges and how to get over those barriers. And now, you know, you've maybe got your groove going on, but you have been making substantial progress moving forward. And so if that's true, then you want to look at the third question. Will you have funds remaining at the end of the grant period? Now, if all of these you can answer yes, then you want to consider submitting a no cost extension. There we go. So what are the expectations during your no cost extension? So one of the things I want to share about a no cost extension is you can extend up to another year, another grant year. Or maybe you're just like, you know what, we just have a little bit more to do. Maybe we just want to do another round of assessment and then be able to have that data to sort of wrap up our grant. And we only need to maybe extend the grant for 6 months. That's appropriate too. You don't have to do it for the entire year. But the 1 year is the maximum extension allotment for a no cost extension. So while you're in that no cost extension period, you want to make sure that you are still completing your APR update. And that's even prior to getting into your no cost extension period. You want to make sure that you are still attending talking circles and other technical assistance opportunities, and that you are participating in your in the project directors meeting. And so all of those resources and experiences are you're still expected to attend and participate in. So how do you apply for a no cost extension? Well, this year we've created a form that you can use to submit your no-cost extension. This form will allow your program officer to check that all information necessary to apply for your NCE is provided. And that's the acronym we use for no-cost extensions, called NCE, just in case you hear us say that. When is that due? It's due August 18th. So as of today, we do not have any NAL grantees who have submitted this no-cost extension request form. You have, if you are interested in doing that, now's the time to get on it, because again, the deadline is August 18th. And your program officers really need you to meet that deadline, because there may be some going back and forth regarding information, that is maybe lacking, or they need a little bit more description on, and they need to do on their side, they need to do the paperwork in order to ensure that you can actually have the no-cost extension. And so you really want to hit that August 18th date. So what are the questions in this NCE form? So here are the questions. How long of a no-cost extension are you requesting? And like I said, the maximum you can request is 12 months. The minimum is really up to you. So, again, back to what Robert and I think both and Cindy were talking about, is really look at what work you need to complete, because that is a condition of an NCE. Look at your budget to make sure you have enough money to be able to complete that work within that time period. Really look at, also the timing of your own maybe school or schedule, when assessments happen, if it's, connected to assessments, but you really want to take some stock in what's going on in your program to inform your decisions and the responses. Why are you requesting a no-cost extension? Again, I gave you one example of maybe you want to do your final run of an assessment. I know there are lots of challenges around, the pandemic and finding people to help with the assessment and developing the curriculum. And so this might be, a time where you maybe have 2 years of some solid data as it relates to your assessment, and you want to have that run again. That's a great reason to request a no-cost extension. What do you plan to do during the no-cost extension period? Really talking about the activities. What grant objectives are these activities tied to, and how? So you are going to want to go back to your either the GEPRA or your project measures and really connect the activities to those objectives. And then upload your no-cost extension request budget worksheet. So again, wanting to make sure all of that is available. So for those of you who are saying, you know what, we have done all the work we've had to do, we have been meeting our objectives, or at least maybe we have done all the activities we said we were going to do, and we've expended most of our grant funds. At least by the end of our grant period, we would have expended our funds. We want to go and close out this grant, and we want to complete our final performance reports. And so those final performance reports are due 120 days after the last day of your grant. We are going to be having a webinar on that, specifically the final performance report, what's required, on November 2nd of 2023. You can also watch, we did do a webinar. It is on the OIE YouTube for the final performance reports. So if you want to kind of get a jump on final performance report, you can go to the OIE YouTube site and look up that recording, or you can wait for the November 2nd webinar and get it live, and or look at that recording afterwards. So for our fiscal year 2022 grantees, you're starting to wrap up your first year of your grant, and you're preparing for your second grant year to begin October 1st. One big checklist item as you prepare for year 2 is to check your new grant award notification or GAN. So your new GAN will be sent to you via G5. I can see there's some discussion in the chat regarding G5 and your new GAN. We are, that is going to be really the document in which you are looking at both your carryover as well as your amount of funding being allocated for the new grant year. Excuse me. The areas you really want to check is first, you want to check block 5 for your project director, name and level of effort. Want to make sure that that's updated because again, you know that the project director is a key staff person as it relates to your grant. That is who OIE sort of communicates with as it relates again to any business related to your grant. And so you want to make sure that that project director in that block 5 is the actual person who OIE can email and get a response from, and that's a correct name. Also, the level of effort is also correct. If either of these are incorrect, you should reach out to your program officer to make those adjustments. Next, when you're looking at your GAN, you want to look at block 6 and 7. So you'll see the start and end date of each grant year. In block 7, you'll see how much you were awarded for year 2. This action and budget period should match and be your year 2 grant award. The performance period amount reflects your award for all years of the grant combined. If this amount is less than you were expecting, less than what was originally listed on your original GAN for year 2, it's possible that you received a budget cut. You want to reach out to your program officer to determine why and where exactly the money was cut. Okay, awesome. Looks like we're getting some resolution on finding that information in G5 in the chat. So how to determine your year 2 budget? As you begin thinking about year 2, remember that in order to determine your total year 2 budget, you must add your year 1 carryover plus your year 2 grant award. This will give you the total amount that you have available to spend in year 2. We will review this information and give you directions for year 2 budget planning at the Talking Circle in October. Another piece of the GAN or another section of the GAN that you really want to take a look at is block 10. You may look at this block and think it is just a bunch of legalese, but this is a very important block to read really carefully. If any restrictions or conditions have been placed on your award for year 2, it will be described here. This could be a requirement for quarterly reporting, route payment, among others. If you see any conditions noted here, you'll want to set a meeting with your program officer just to discuss what all those conditions entail. Again, do not just sort of glance over this. Don't put this on your back burner. This will be, your program officer will be looking for you to fulfill the conditions that are identified in this block. So really look at that block. So year 2 grant budget revisions, when are those due? Those are going to be due November 16th. They are required for all grantees. And again, we'll be providing more of the step-by-step in-depth detail in our October Talking Circle. So if you're unable to make that October Talking Circle, of course, we record that and you can always go back and listen to that recording. Also, maybe you do attend. Again, you might want to access that recording as you go step by step through that budget revision process. All righty. I'm just going to check the chat. Okay, looks like those questions have been answered. Awesome. Okay. So enough Olani talking. I want to jump into you folks talking. And so let's get started. And we're really just trying to plan out, our next sort of focus is planning out the next year. particularly for grantees for 2022, as you're ending year one and preparing for year two. Although I really want to encourage, again, our grantees for fiscal year 20 to please share your experiences and your learning, and maybe even talk about if you are going for an NCE, what you are doing to prepare for that NCE process. And so everyone is included in this discussion. So you put a lot of work into planning and implementing your program. How do you know if what you're doing is actually working? How and when do you make those adjustments? If you are going to make those adjustments, what do you do with those results once you have them? These are all really important questions that a continuous improvement process will help you answer. The process of continuous improvement can help you ensure that you are following the path you intended with your program. This process is widely used in business and also, during the regular school day. I know teachers are doing that on the fly as they are working with students. The continuous improvement process is cyclical. It's with a logical workflow in which each step relies on the step that came before it. And if you follow the process, it will lead you to better instruction and or program delivery, which leads to better, student outcomes. So let's go through the first phases, the different phases of this continuous improvement. The first phase of the cycle includes defining your goals with your program team. Much of this work was done in your grant proposal. And so again, you want to look at maybe going back to your APR, that section A, look at your GEPRA, look at your project objectives or your project measures, and really take some time to go over that with your entire team. When you reviewed and revised this, you will also want to make it part of your defined step. You have to determine how you will track progress at the various levels throughout your program in order to ensure fidelity of implementation. Moving along in the cycle, you will also need to collect a variety of data, analyze those data, and then use findings to make program adjustments or improvements. The data collection really varies, but it's important to think about it early because you want to make sure you have all the tools you need in order to collect the data that's important to you. One of the biggest challenges we hear about in continuous improvement is the time that it takes. It does take a time on top of everything else, but it can also be embedded into your daily processes or your staff meeting or professional development. It is a critical component because all of the work you do to plan and implement a great program could be jeopardized if you don't measure results along the way and make adjustments in a timely manner. Your APR really necessitates the collection and analysis of data, so it can fit quite nicely into sort of the larger process you're utilizing within your program. After planning and implementing your program, how do you know if what you're doing is working? And how do you know when to make adjustments if you're going to make adjustments? And what do you do with the results when you have them? These are all really important questions that continuous improvement process will help you answer. Now, of course, the process is just a framework and a process. You really need to engage the right people in this process. So whether it's your assessment developer, your proctors, maybe your teachers, also sometimes even your students and administration, who are the right people you need to have at this table to develop and to determine, the answers to all of these questions. So again, you want to determine the purpose of your program goals and objectives. You want to be able to implement with fidelity. This step really involves, continually checking and adjusting your program activities. You want to make sure that you're collecting data, create a plan to collect data from a variety of sources with different methods based on the goals of your program. You want to make sure you're carving out that time to not just collect data, but to analyze it. This step really involves in reviewing data and reflecting on that data. Also looking at how you're going to improve. So what are the steps involved in acting on the results of the data? So steps 3, 4, and 5 are cyclical, which means that you should be collecting data, analyzing that data, and making adjustments to improve throughout your grant project. So completing your APR each year is a grant requirement, but all that data and knowledge in this report shouldn't just be popped into G5 and forgotten. Your APR data should be an integral part of your continuous improvement process. Let's take a few moments right now to really discuss your APR in more detail. So here are some questions when you're thinking about, again, your APR or gearing up again to look at maybe your APR updates, which is a great sort of pause in sort of the rigmarole and all of the busyness around actual project implementation and that important work to really take some stock in lessons learned maybe that were revealed in the last year. Again, at the beginning of our talking circle, we heard a lot of like lessons learned and what to's. And so did you reach your goals and objectives? So I just want you to think through some of this. What goals did you not reach? Maybe there's a couple of them you weren't able to reach. And what kept you from reaching those goals? Again, really good questions to be asking yourself at this time of the year. What did you learn from your APR? Did anything in your APR surprise you? I mean, as you were collecting data and putting things into your APR, did anything surprise you? Like, I remember when we first created our assessments, what surprised us was that, and I don't know why it would surprise us, but we undershot our students' ability. And so we had set a certain level of expectation, but after doing our first assessment, we realized that our students went way beyond what we had expected them to achieve, which was a great surprise to us. But we did need to make some adjustments in both our assessment as well as our instruction. What steps did you take after your APR? So once you completed your APR, did you utilize that information to really maybe improve your program, make adjustments? What data collection and analysis did you do this year other than your APR? So really think through some of those questions. And those are like great like reflection questions as again, you're thinking about your APR, the performance from last year and moving into next year. So now we're going to break out into, I think, maybe 2 breakout rooms with some of your peers to really think about how this grant year went and how that impacts your planning for next year. Again, I really want to encourage, I know this may seem real heavy on our fiscal year 22 grantees, but if you are maybe going into no cost extension, I want to make sure that you're engaged in this conversation as well as you, if you maybe are going to complete the grant and you're going to submit your FPR. I mean, what are some of the lessons you're going to learn that you've learned that may help you sustain the program beyond the grant year? So I really want to encourage everyone to participate in the breakout discussions. So what new things, activities, processes do you want to start in the next year? What things, including activities or processes, do you want to stop as you move into the next year? And so maybe, again, there's some things that didn't work that you want to stop doing. Or maybe you no longer need those activities or processes in order to implement your program. And finally, what things are you deciding to continue to do next year? So maybe there were activities that were great that you want to continue, or maybe like as far as processes go, maybe engaging teachers in developing your assessment questions as a process that you want to continue. And so you want to discuss those things. Again, I just really want to encourage everyone to participate. We're going to go into the breakout room for about 7 minutes and have you discuss those questions.
And Alani, we had a couple of people who had to leave early.
Oh, okay.
So I think we can just keep everybody here for a group discussion.
Sounds like a plan. Alrighty, so we're not going into breakout. We're a small enough group that we can do it all together. And so if anyone wants, again, come off of mute, maybe share let's just take it from what you want to start, stop, or continue in this new year, whether it's going into a second year of your grant, an NCE, or maybe making the transition from having a NAL grant to sustaining the program beyond the grant period.
I can go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name's Dara. I'm from Navajo Preparatory School. One of the things I'd like to start doing with our grant is really, I think, establishing more buy-in across the school community. I think we have really strong support from our staff and students, but it's, I think what I could start doing to be a better steward of that partnership is more updates to our community about what's going on with the program, more opportunities for feedback and for providing input. So really kind of making sure that it's not just how we're rolling out this program, but making sure that that people feel really connected to the work that's being done and that they see their role in it. It's hard, especially in the planning, the planning, we're still getting things off the ground. It's a lot of behind the scenes work still. So establishing really strong community buy-in at that stage is been a little challenging, but that's something I'd like to start doing. I'm thinking monthly news, a newsletter with more information, or even just updates and announcements and highlights to really support that, the celebration of the progress we're making. For the stop, something I'd like to stop doing. I don't really have a stop, but I think another start that I would do, I mean, you could put it in a negative, but I'll put it in a positive, to start having really good monthly meetings with our finance department, because we did have some issues with our drawdowns. The funds were being expended, but we have to get a little bit more, I think, systematic in our approach with the budget office. And I think what I've realized is that I, as a project director, I don't do drawdowns, but I think I need to be a little overseeing the accountability side a little bit more. So I'm going to start doing that. And then continue. One thing I'd like to continue doing is really utilizing this group for support. I've been so struck by what I've learned over the past few years. My first grant management with OIE was 4 years ago, and I've learned so much over the process. And even this week, we had another OIE grantee, which is NIEA, on our campus doing their blanket exercise, which is funded through their ACE grant. And it was really cool to see that project in action and to connect. We also had an ACE grant, but to have their project be a part of our school community was really special. And it made me think back to when I was a first year project director, and I was so kind of not overwhelmed, but just a little unsure and a little stressed. And I would just reach out to some of the project directors and be like, hey, can you show me your budget? I just want to see how to use this template. Or I would schedule the OIETA calls with Sarah and have one-on-one Zooms. And really, it was very amazing to have that support from other grantees. And I remember at first, some of them were like, our budget is going to be different than yours. And it was for the ACE grant, which was such a struggle at first. And I was like, no, I'm not comparing the amounts. I don't care. I just need to see, how did you make the 20% or whatever work? And that's one thing that I've been really struck with. Our former head of school, Miss Betty OJ, she was the project director for our original NCYP grant before she retired, and she has spoken so highly to the changes that have taken place. Because when I tell her, like, oh wow, like the first place I go for help is to OIE with these projects, and she shared that in her prior experience, there weren't the templates, there weren't the Zoom calls, there wasn't the talking circles in the same way. And it's pretty amazing to see the way that the progress has really, I think, shifted and I think for me, when I say continue, I think it's really the capacity building that you all are doing in us, and I'm really grateful for it. So I hope to continue to learn and get better at this, because it is challenging, but I love that you guys see us project directors as people that you're investing in to learn how to do better. And I have to say, sorry if I'm just going on and on, but it's just in reflection. I think that we've applied for other grants with other departments, and we've been really, I think, like strengthened by the confidence that we've gotten in learning how to manage with you all, because it is such a supportive environment. And so it's now when we go after other departmental funds, which are not the same level of support, we kind of know, like, all right, we can do this, or here's what we got to do. And so it's been really cool to progress and continue with you all in that way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love the whole you being able to partner with other grantees to have, and across the different grant programs. That's
well, actually, that's when we were at NIEA in Omaha. We were able to present with 2 other grantees, and we had met from these Zoom calls. So it was we had NACA Inspired Network, Red Cloud, and then I think somebody else. And it was just that shared grant initiative that we were able to bring our stories together. It was a really kind of a cool experience. So I know sometimes it's hard to get to the talking circles, but it's really helpful to build that collaboration. So thank you guys.
Oh, thank you. That's great. I mean, the idea that we can create community with grantees, and that you can, develop your capacity is wonderful. And I mean, we're here, and so we really want to make sure that you're taking advantage of all of the different resources. So it's so great to hear. Thank you, Dara. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else want to share? Start, stop, continue? If not, again, you can also put that in the chat. Excuse me. One sort of final think about today is, with a full grant year under your belt, or multiple years under your belt, and maybe you are thinking about, again, we're talking about year 2 and planning that forward, or even doing your NCE time. How can we best support you both in year 2 or doing your NCE? We'd love to hear. Again, come off of mute. Also, you can put it in the chat too. We really want to hear how we can help and support you.
I think it would be amazing to do another in-person project director meeting for future. I know it's already scheduled this year to be virtual, and it is a really cool virtual conference as far as virtual conferences go, but to get to meet and really partner with other grantees, I think would be amazing, because it can be hard to disconnect while you're attending a conference virtually, especially in school settings where it's all hands all the time. Oh, cool. Okay, I just saw Dr. Savas Burns in person 2025.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Other suggestions? That's a great one. Again, I think I get the whole, it is hard to disconnect during online, but I think one statement I heard you say was really to partner with grantees. And so maybe even though we're still virtual now, maybe we can look at different ways in which we can encourage that community and that opportunities for partnering, and think we'll look for different strategies in order to do that, even online. Any other suggestions? Okay. If not, again, if something pops in your mind, we're going to be going through our wrap-up slides. If something pops in your mind, please go ahead and put that in the chat. I'm guessing, are there any questions that maybe we haven't discussed that are like on your mind that you want to make sure we get to? Okay. So we're going to be putting up the end of the event poll. I know that some of you are leaving now. If you could finish that poll, just takes a couple of seconds. As we are going through the closing, I just want to share that each year in August, we distribute a grantee satisfaction survey to all members of each grantee team that have participated in any TA event. That includes talking circles, office hours, maybe a content webinar or PD meeting. This means it goes to all of the project directors as well as any of your team members that maybe attended a talking circle or the PD meeting or webinar. We use this feedback to help us plan the types and topics of technical assistance that we provide in the upcoming year. We would greatly appreciate you in taking 5 minutes to complete that short survey. We want to make sure that we're meeting your needs and that this type of feedback can really be helpful to us to help, again, like what Dara was saying, help support you to build your capacity. If you have any changes or additions you want to include in the email list, please go ahead and send that information to the oie@seiservices.com. In particular, if you have any changes in your project director or authorized representative, you want to make sure that you are submitting the required letter signed by your authorized representative. Also, please make sure you are CCing your program officer for changes to the project director or authorized representative. And in that email, you want to make sure you're including the name, the role, and the email address so that we can reach out to them and share upcoming events. Also, we've been talking about this a lot is, if you have any questions, you need any support, please contact your OIE technical assistance team. You can see there in the chat, I think Casey's going to be putting our email there. Also, the Calendly, if you want to schedule some coaching time, you can go ahead and do that at that link, that Calendly link. Upcoming events, and so our monthly office hours, the next one coming up is in August, on August 24th, and then the final one for this grant year will be on September 21st. The NAL Talking Circle will be for the year 2 for fiscal year 22, or for the new grant year will be in October. The date is still to be determined. And then the final performance report webinar will be on November 2nd. And there's that time there. Again, I want to thank you folks for joining us today. A great discussion, great sharing. Thank you everyone who shared. Again, you can connect with Donna Sabas-Burns, your interim NAL program officer, at her email there. I'm sure you all have that, as well as check out the latest on the OIE Twitter account at OIE Indian Ed. Or if you need some technical assistance, then email us at oie@seiservices.com. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Aloha.
Thank you, everybody.